Good morning and welcome to Rising. Thanks for joining us, and a belated Happy Mother's Day to anyone watching to whom that label applies, and of course our own mothers. Did you have a nice weekend?
I did. I went home to Cleveland for the weekend, was able to celebrate with my mother, aunt, and grandmother, and it was a good time. How about yourself?
Fantastic. I was not able to see Mom, but I gave her a call, wished her a happy birthday, and I'm looking forward to going on a trip with her and my own grandmother in a few weeks to Florida, so that'll be a really nice little family reunion with cousins and everything.
That's nice. I was going to make a joke before you said that you were going to be visiting with your mom, saying that I call that the elder son special, when you just get a call. And then your son pats himself on the back for remembering that it was Mother's Day and all. But you're doing the work. You're going to have a good vacation in a little bit.
All right. Well, let's get to our top story of the day. New polling released this morning, absolutely devastating for Joe Biden's electoral chances, showing that Donald Trump is leading President Joe Biden in 5 of the key battleground swing states. A New York Times, Philadelphia Inquirer, Siena College poll. Love how many of these polling firms work together. So many names, so many numbers we're going to throw at you. But Biden is down 12 points in Nevada, 10 points in Georgia, 7 points in Arizona and Michigan, and 3 points in Pennsylvania. Wisconsin is the only battleground state where Joe Biden is currently ahead of Donald Trump. He leads there by 2 points. Now, Biden won all 6 of those states in 2020. The findings reveal that many voters' feelings on Biden's handling of the war in Gaza, discontent with Biden also on the economy, and so many other issues.
One Nevada voter told the New York Times, quote, "It is concerning when I keep seeing press come out of the White House where they keep saying the economy is good. That's really weird because I'm paying more on taxes and more on groceries and more on housing and more on fuel." Here's CNN's Fareed Zakaria's takes on what November could look like for Biden.
Here's my take. When President Biden made clear he was going to run for re-election, I had a sense of what his election strategy was and thought it was an intelligent path to victory. After the chaos of COVID and Trump, Joe Biden would stand for normalcy and a rising tide of good economic news. I have to admit, none of this is playing out as I thought it would. Trump is now leading in almost all the swing states. Trump could always embroil himself in some kind of scandal. But trend lines are not working in Biden's favor. He needs to do something bold and dramatic to seize the initiative, on asylum policy, for example, and reverse these numbers. The one that troubles me the most is on the question of who was the more competent. Joe Biden led Donald Trump by 9 points in 2020, but Trump now leads by 16 points in January 2024. That 25-point shift could be a reflection of people's sense that the president's age is affecting his capacity to govern. And there's very little that Joe Biden can do now to change that perception.
So a couple other interesting findings here. So now if you look at just likely voters, Biden gets a little bit closer in some of the states, and he's trailing just narrowly then in Michigan and Pennsylvania as well. With RFK Jr. and the independent candidates in the mix, it basically doesn't change it. RFK Jr. is like at 10% in this poll, and he is taking from both Trump and Biden at this point. I think it's interesting that, frankly, Biden is more competitive in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin than he is. Trump is much more solidly ahead. Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, which are they're more racially diverse states. Interesting. I think you can see the effect very clearly that Gaza is having for an issue on Biden, the dissatisfaction with younger voters, certain minority voters as well. If Trump were to, actually get this many black voters in accordance with where the polls are, that would be like the best showing for a Republican among black voters since I think like Richard Nixon ran against John Kennedy. And then the economic woes not helping Biden with a lot of moderate voters, a lot of, the anti-Trump Republican voters, they all out there. So it is just bad news on a lot of fronts.
Yeah, so with respect to Hispanic voters, the Times piece makes clear that Trump and Biden are essentially tied between 18 to 29-year-old Hispanic voters, even though that group gave Biden more than 60% of their vote in 2020. That's a huge shift. Trump does win more than 20% of black voters, but that's nothing as compared to what we're seeing with respect to the shift in Hispanic voters. The article also points out that in many respects, Biden is better off. Things have happened that should have advantaged Biden as compared to when we saw the last round of these not very good polls for Biden with respect to swing states, including him already starting a significant ad spend, the fact that Donald Trump is currently in the middle of a criminal trial. A lot of things that people thought were going to get better as we got closer to the election, including his posture in Gaza, have in fact gotten a lot worse. And I think the Gaza point is, of course, important to focus in on. There is some interesting kind of word on the street, testimonial, narrative commentary in this piece. But numerically, when it comes to Gaza, about 13% of voters who say they voted for Joe Biden the last time around, but do not plan to do so this time around, cite his foreign policy and specifically the war in Gaza. And of that 13% of people who said, I voted for him before, but I'm not voting for him this time, only 17% say that they think he's not sympathetic enough that they're not sympathetic enough with Israel. And in other words, it's people who think that he's being too sympathetic to Israel that are dragging him down. Again, 13% among people who, these are not swing voters, these are not maybe voters, these are people who have demonstrated that they will vote for Joe Biden, right, have voted for Joe Biden, have simply changed their mind over this one issue.
Well, and if he's losing, young, more progressive voters for this, even if that's not, the entirety of his base of support, but he's not gaining, he's not offsetting right, those losses with gains elsewhere,
right,
and he's losing, maybe his foreign policy, his stance on those things might not matter as much to some of those moderate, middle of the road suburban voters, but they're not, he's not gaining their votes. They dislike him for other reasons. The economy, the attempts to spin the economic news coming from the White House, coming from sympathetic media, are falling on completely deaf ears. The electorate is not buying that argument at all. Prices still seem way too high for them in terms of groceries, housing, gas, all of those things. They are not buying the argument that the economy is turning around.
I also think Fareed Zakaria's point about the kind of confidence in the president might be a reflection of something that we knew from the beginning, and Biden and the Democratic Party could have paid attention to from the beginning, which is that about 3/4 of the Democratic electorate did not want Joe Biden to be the candidate precisely because they did not see him to be either cognitively fit or that his age was going to be an issue. And it's hard for me to hear a stat about competency like that and not wonder if things, frankly, that are beyond Biden's control, namely his age and mental fitness, are really driving those numbers down. It's also worth noting that it doesn't seem like Donald Trump's trial, the hush money trial, is having any impact at all. The Times says that the survey offered little indication that the trial damaged the former president's political fortunes. So far, just 29% of voters in battleground states said that they were paying a lot of attention to Mr. Trump's legal woes, and 35% thought that the trial was likely to end in a conviction. So people, so far at least, aren't really paying enough attention. It doesn't seem to be moving the needle here. And I think your point is fundamentally the core one, that if Biden is losing votes on the left and not picking up votes anywhere else, he is doomed. And this is really telling, because the Democratic Party, they said this in 2016, they've been repeating it since then. They believe that they can fill in the gap of their core base voters ditching the Democratic Party by reaching out to moderates. You see the Biden campaign reaching out to Nikki Haley voters while really thumbing its nose at the left, seeing the growing discontent over the conduct in Gaza, seeing the growing discontent of the idea that American tax dollars are being spent on a conflict that doesn't seem to have any upside for the American people, and choosing instead to stay the course. It seems obvious here that if it doesn't go Biden's way in November, the idea that they're going to be able to blame this on the left as opposed to their own choice to basically rather lose the election rather than to abandon Israel, that's going to sit hard on the Democratic Party. And I think it's going to have to affect their strategy going forward into future elections. Can you get away with blaming the left anymore when you've made it clear to the American public that you would rather lose than veer from the kind of core geopolitical warmongering instincts that both parties have adopted over the history of this country?
Well, in both parties, someone is going to lose in November, and that party is going to have to take a long, hard look in the mirror and say, how did we blow this?
Yes,
because either party could have turned this into, I don't know for sure, but it certainly seems like either party could have turned this into a landslide victory for their side with a different candidate other than the two that are running, with massive negatives, massive red flags that they're both contending with, that are frustrating their own supporters. But neither side was able to ditch their guy, and so we're in this like race to the bottom.
Yeah, and I will say Donald Trump is benefiting from not being in the White House and not having direct responsibility.
Not having to take ownership
for
of
the
all
economy
of these terrible policies,
or
yeah.
for foreign policy or anything and the like. And he's also having the benefit of not being questioned directly by at all adversarial media on what his actual positions on these things were. He instigated the TikTok ban. Now he says he's for the TikTok ban. He's flip-flopped all over the place on something like Pfizer surveillance. He says things like the war has got to end with respect to Gaza, but also I stand by my ally Israel. And it allows voters to project onto him whatever they want to be the case. And that is a real advantage for him. But I don't know that that actually is a substantive advantage for the American public when they get a candidate who is likely to be very similar to Joe Biden in a lot of these respects. Meanwhile, independent candidates like RFK Jr., Cornel West, and Jill Stein are constructively eliminated by not having a primary, by not allowing there to be any kind of debates. Donald Trump obviously has ditched all debates in the Democratic primary. The Democrats didn't allow there to be any primary whatsoever. And so what are the real options that are presented to the American public? What does it mean for us to have one of the largest, most powerful countries in the world where we claim to have this grasp on what democracy is? This is supposed to be an election about preserving a democracy. And people legitimately have two choices that they do not like and feel like they are locked in because our media system and our political system will not reveal to them that there are others waiting in the wings.
Well, as we mentioned last week, RFK Jr. will be attending the Libertarian Party convention later this month. Donald Trump is scheduled to speak there as well, and RFK Jr. has challenged Donald Trump to debate him while they're both at that convention, which will be in D.C.
Yeah,
So
notably,
we'll
I should say, when that happened, Jill Stein also followed up with RFK Jr., who had said that he would submit himself to a debate, but has declined to actually follow through with Jill Stein and the other third-party candidates. So I'd like to see if there's any movement on that as well.
A third-party debate would also be terrific. More Rising right after this.